Alex, I just want to ask you this question. Do you remember the first time animation really caught your eye as a kid?
Ah, that's a good question. So I didn't grow up much with like interest on drawing or anything like that. I was more like playing outside, playing sports and stuff. And I was always very curious about technology in general. So that's where I start knowing about animation. And at the time, Pixar had like very good feature releases, and I think that's where I started getting more and more interested with like Toy Story, like all the Toy Story films and all like those Pixar very story driven, like Ratatouille, like all those movies. That's when I started like, oh, actually, that's really fun. But it wasn't. It's funny because people asked me before, and it wasn't that thing like, oh, I was always a kid that liked drawing and passionate about art. I was actually the opposite. I was more like, oh, I like playing sports. I like going outside, and then end up getting into. I always liked technology in general, like computer and stuff. So yeah, I think that was like the time where I saw this transition because it was the mix of technology and still art, but I was more interested like, oh, it's 3D animation. That's like it's new. So I think that's when I realized. So it wasn't when I was a kid, it was more like teenager years.
Right. Okay, so moving on. Could you take us back to the very beginning before animation? You mentioned that you initially started working, using the software 3D Max, and you were
Yeah.
doing architectural visualization. And
Yes.
so, what was the spark that made you decide to pivot from that to animation?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Brazil, so there we started working a lot earlier. So I remember I started working with 3D. It was when I was like 15 to 16 years old, which is like very young to start like working professionally. And then I was very curious, like I said, about like 3D technology, and I started learning a little bit of modeling, a little bit of like the whole software. I didn't even know about animation at the time. And then I got this job where it was like architecture visualization in 3D Max. So that helped me just figure out a little bit of every step of the process. And then we had a economic crisis in Brazil, back in Brazil, for the real estate market. So that company, they say like, okay, yeah, we don't have clients. Let's try to branch out to also animation because otherwise we're gonna bankrupt. And then they say like for each person, oh, could you try to learn a little bit of this and this and this? And for me, I remember they said like, oh, can you learn surfacing? And I was like, oh, I'm not very artistic to learn surfacing. So I look at the like animation pipeline and I saw the animators are the one that had like the most in the end of the credits. I was just like, oh, if there's like so many people, I can also learn it because like there's just like two riggers, like four like I was like, okay, animation. So I kind of like push myself, like, okay, I'm gonna learn animation instead. And then they say like, yeah, okay. And that's when I start like, okay, I'm gonna start reading some books, seeing some videos, etc. In the end, and I saw like some schools, like online schools at the time. Animation Mentor and I Animate were the two available ones. It's extremely expensive if you live abroad. So for me, I really wanted to do it, but I couldn't afford. But for me, it was like this first interaction, and then the company end up having to lay off almost like everyone. I think they just kept like two or three people in total. Like the company was just two or three, and that's when I started like, okay, I'm gonna transition from this 3D Max architecture visualization to animation like slowly. So I think it was a period of like 4 years or five that was like slowly still working with ArcVist for like several different clients and trying to do animation on the side. And
Right.
then that was like the transition point.
Okay. So, what was your first job where you were just, a full-time animator?
First job was full-time animator was full time, I think, was Boba Films in Brazil. It was a TV series show that for like it was a contract for that season, and that was I don't remember the year, but that was like early on. It was after I did Animation Mentor. I
Okay,
did Animation Mentor. I ended up doing Animation Mentor, and then I did like one freelance here and there, and then finally I got this job at this company. It was like a TV series.
understood. Is that the place where you also Nickelodeon was also a client?
No, that was just like one small project, Le Cube
Okay,
TV. They're like from Argentina, and I did
right.
one project for it was like the Nickelodeon small thing. It was almost at the same time as that. It was like on that time range, but that one was just like one little project, and then you're gone, and then another little project, you're gone, and that was more full time. I was going to the studio every day and working there for several months.
And I heard that, or maybe it's before this time, or after this time, or maybe during this time, you were also teaching somewhere.
Yes, it was before this time. I was teaching 3D Max and Maya, the software for high school. I always like teaching, so that I started teaching very early there, and I was teaching for like about 2 years, and then I decided to quit to finish Animation Mentor, and then I started working on those jobs. So it was a little bit prior. Yeah.
Right. So I did have this question now that you bring Animation Mentor. So you have studied at places like Animation Mentor and Animation Collaborative. What
Yep.
was the most transformative lessons from those experiences?
Oh, I think for me, it was really helpful to see the professionals of the industry really their workflow and how they're thinking, how they're doing. Because at the time when I started looking up about animation, I didn't have an idea of how much thought you need to put in and how much you need to actually like develop the character, personality, and all that stuff. So I was always focusing on just making the movement smooth. And I was doing like bouncing ball. And even when I had a character, it was just about like it was moving nonsense. And once I start getting to animation mentor, animation collaborative, I really learned like, okay, they're thinking about the subtext, the acting, the rhythm of the shot. So all those new concepts start getting into my mind. It took me a while to understand those concepts from the time I learned them from the teachers I had. Like I had like amazing teachers. To the time I could apply, it had like a very big gap because it was like advanced for me that I didn't even understand. I was like, oh yeah, and then slowly started making sense. And I think it really really helped me on my workflow to have this mentor from Pixar, Royce Wesley, and he's an animation director there, I believe now, but he's been there forever, and he was very nice on like explaining his workflow and stuff, and I got a lot from his workflow on my own workflow today. With the little adjustments that are make more sense for me, but he really helped me making the animation like before, like understand the process. Before I was just like trying to follow, oh, make record a reference, make the poses every 2 frames, and then go to spline, clean up the curves. I didn't quite understand that process. I was just like, yeah, but I don't have control. And then he taught me the process like that I've been teaching these days, where it's more like you still make the poses, but you check the rhythm, you check the flow, what you extract from the reference, when you stop using reference, etc. So that was on Animation Collaborative. It was very, very useful.
Understood. Yeah, I have the same experience where, initially I just did like the ball bounce, but I didn't understand the real reason. And then later understood the real reason of the ball bounce, which actually,
Yeah,
you had mentioned once in one of your Patreon videos I'd seen. So,
yeah, yeah.
that was very helpful. My second question is, you had mentioned, especially early on in your career, that, you had been laid off, which is, of course, pretty common in the animation industry, and you eventually then pivoted into freelancing. How did you navigate, that uncertain phase? And do you also have any advice for fellow freelancers?
Yeah, so the thing about freelance for me, and I've done freelance for like many years for a long time, even while I was on like some jobs, is that only get a project that you can deliver, because a lot of freelance, they first, it's hard to get projects. Yes. First, like try to work on your reel and you work on your network, try to talk to people who are like working on some company like similar level as you, that they can recommend you and stuff. But after you get it, like once you start getting freelance, try to just get what you're able to deliver, because what I see the most is people getting like two, three projects at the same time, and then they do all of them in like a lower quality because they don't have enough time. But they're like, oh no, I'm not gonna have anything after, so I need to take this, this, and this, because then I'm gonna be able to survive for like 3 more months or 6 more months. But then in the end, they just like do a worse job and they don't get called back for some of them that maybe would continue working with them. So that's what I've been seeing the most often. And the other thing is like just try to expand your network. For me, it was like definitely it was very different times, but I was always present on like what would be today Discord communities of the animators, like checking out the job openings, checking what other people are doing, trying to, if I find people close to my level that we either study together or work together or want to do a study together, try to like collaborate with them like back and forth, like, oh, I'm doing this shot, give me some notes, I'm gonna give you some notes as well, etc. So that will help you building like this network of connection, and also like a friendly personality. So those people will remember you, and you're gonna remember those people as well. Once like you find a project, and then you're like, oh, recommend someone, and then they were gonna remember, etc. And these days to find freelance, I feel like internet has like so many resources that is even it has too much that is even hard to find because it's like everywhere. But I feel like Discord communities always have like a job opening. Some of the Discord communities out there. LinkedIn has a lot of companies posting job openings, and just Google in general. If you just try to Google it, you can try to find something there. But that's as far as I know. I haven't looked for forever, so maybe there are better ways there.
Right. Okay. And my other question is, so you took part, I think twice or maybe more than twice in the 30-second film club. So, how was that process like, and what was the learning experience you got from it?
The 11-second club.
Yeah, sorry, the 11-second
Yeah,
club.
yeah, the 11-second. Yeah, yeah. I did a couple of times. At the time, 11-second club was similar to the Agora challenge that we have these days. It was like the biggest animation challenge. They're still around, but I feel like a lot of the more professional people jumped into the Agora challenge. But the 11-second club, it was a way to force myself to finish something on that month. So you have 1 month, you have a dialogue that is 11 seconds, and then you just need to animate. And it was just like a good way to just force myself, okay, I have this 1 month, I need to finish it, or I'm not gonna be rated. And it didn't even matter. Of course, I wanted to win, but it didn't even matter too much for me, the final rating, but it mattered for me to just finish in that 1 month, having that tight deadline. But of course, I think I think I did like 3 times, and I got like super low, like 40s, 50s out of 80. And then I got on the 20th ish range. And then I think the best one I got was I don't know, like fifth, sixth place, something like
Yeah, I
that.
think fifth place.
Fifth, yeah, something like that. Which I never got to win it, but for me it was a win to just finish it and have like a
And to see the
decent quality.
progress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you see, like every time I participated, it was just going up and up. So that was also good to see.
Right. So now I want to get a little bit, I want to go a little bit in front of your timeline. So you freelance in Brazil for a bit. Then you also managed to work on the Russian studio for the film Sheep and Wolves. So how was
Yeah,
that process like, especially because you're working on a feature film, but this is remote work. So how
yeah,
was that whole ordeal like?
yeah. So that was like right after the TV series. I got this. It was like a freelancing for Wizard Animation in Russia, and it was interesting because there were not a lot of remote work at the time. It was like something new, and it was a little bit hard because it was the first feature film, but it wasn't as demanding as working at DreamWorks, for example, in terms of quality, because they understand they're hiring freelancers. So they give a lot of support. Sometimes they were sending references for us to follow. And it was, for me, it was very, very challenging because it was the first time I was actually trying to really make the acting work and the animation to flow and stuff. So that, but the supervisor was very good. He helped a lot with like the notes. You were paid at the time, you were paid by second animated. So they would pay like a certain amount of dollars. I don't remember how much, but it would be like, I don't know, let's say like $80, $100 per second animated. But then if you take too long, you just like don't get paid for like 2 months. You have like 10 seconds and they give like a certain timeline. But if you don't finish by the timeline, they push it a little bit. They have a limit to how much they can push, but then you just don't get paid until this timeline. So it was a little bit stressful, but it was a great experience for like have like this first feature film ish experience, and that will was able to open doors for like other jobs. But
Right.
it was good, but little stressful because I don't think I was ready enough. I think I need a little bit more experience, so I had to push it through a little bit.
Understood. So talking about, as you mentioned, it opened doors. So tell me about this because you ended up getting work at Bartle Entertainment Studios in Canada, where you
Yeah,
worked for the Puss in Boots TV series. So just tell me
yeah,
how was that, process, from Brazil to now working in Canada at a,
yeah. So it was exactly after the Wizard film. I think I did Chip and Wolves, and then I did this. Did I do? I think I was in Canada, right? But because I did a few with Wizard. But yeah, so I finished working with them on Ship and Wolves. I put the shots on my reel with the personal work that I've done because after I finished studying, I kept working on personal stuff. Like 11 Second Club was a good example. So from my studies for like my animation mentor demo reel to the reel I applied to Bardell, I barely had stuff from animation mentoring there because I was always like trying to make something better, something better. So animation mentor helped me a lot to get the foundation stuff, but on my real results, I didn't have so much of animation mentor because I kept trying to make it better on my own. And having the experience on Wizard on Ship and Wolves also helped. So I applied to Bordeaux several times. I think I applied like 4 times before they called me. And then someone from Animation Mentor, and she recommended me to the animation supervisor there. She was just casual, like she was working at Bordeaux after Animation Mentor. She is from the US and then she moved to Canada. And she was like, "Oh yeah, you definitely have the quality to animate here." So I was just like, "Yeah, but I applied so many times." And it's like, okay, I'm gonna give me your reel, I'm gonna send to the supervisor. And then they decided to call me on an interview. So it was because of this like connection that we made during Animation Mentor. We have like a group of people that were always like studying together, joining calls and animating together, etc. So she recommended me to Bardell, and that was the way I went to the interview. And then they did the whole process for me to move to Canada to work there. At the time, remote wasn't an option. And I think even still today, remote is not even an option for Canada because of tax incentives and stuff. So, but that was like, it was a mix of me keep pushing my animation because when I was an animation mentor, I wasn't ready. Like when I finished animation mentor, I wasn't ready to join Bardell. So I kept working on my reel. I kept getting other opportunities. And then she was there after animation mentor, and then she recommended me because she saw the improvement, and she also knew me personally as like a nice person that we're just talking and trying to get better together, etc.
And how was your experience like working in the Puss in Boots TV series?
It was good. It was very scary as well because there are like so many talented people in there and a lot of people who were beginners like me. So it was like a mix. But it was the first time I was fully speaking only English for the whole day. So that was very tiring for me because in Brazil we speak Portuguese, so I didn't have English fluency before. Like I don't speak fluent English still from this day. I never did like any specific English course. So for me, it was like very hard to just be listening to English the whole day, think on English, and on top of that, have to animate. When you animate for TV series, the quota, the amount of animation is a lot per month. So you have to produce a lot of content, and it was great. I think it was like the perfect beginning for me as like international career after I left Brazil because I met like really amazing talented people and they all kept pushing. Like we all have this mentality of like let's keep pushing, let's keep getting better, and we're all like top studios these days, like several people working at Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, Sony, etc. And everyone was like very, because a lot of people, it was a wave of people being hired. A lot of people were from outside, like other countries, immigrating to Canada at the same time. So we built like a very nice sense of like community, and it was, I think it was great, a great start. But for me, it was very stressful just to try to catch up to everyone. But at the same time, it was great to have everyone to kind of push me to be able to do that. So that was like really good.
Right. And you had mentioned that when you were working at the studio full time, you still managed to, after your full-time job, go home till 1 to 2 a.m., work at your personal demo reel.
Yeah.
How did you manage that? And how did you have enough of energy, discipline, just everything to do that?
Yeah, I think I remember there was a phase that I was at Bardell and I took a class on animation, Anim Squad, Anim Squad at the time with Malcolm Pierce, because I won. Like I felt it was after working over a year at Bardell, I felt like the animation was getting repetitive because for TV series, it follows a little bit of a formula, so it's hard to push extra things, and we have the time constraint. So during this class, the class were like once a week. So I was going to sleep like very late to make sure I could do enough animation by the time of the class. And how you do it, I think I had a specific goal in mind and I had like a deadline. So that helps me just saying like I'm gonna do this for this amount of time and then I can relax. And I'm gonna do this for this amount of time and then I can relax. And I end up never relaxing because I was doing something. But I took Anim Squad. That was a little stressful, but not too much. I was sleeping not too late-ish and still working full time. It was hard to get the energy to do stuff at night, but it was like getting to winter, so there was like a lot of rain and stuff, or it was like getting to spring, something like that. I don't remember the exact term, but I remember it was like the weather wasn't helping as much, so I was just like staying at home. It was raining. And then after that class, if you have any other question, I don't wanna go over your
So
question
this
flow.
was the class where you ended up working at the Love, V, and Rose shot, right?
Yeah, Love and Rose, yeah.
Yeah, which is, amazing shot, by the way.
So yeah, so the story of this shot is I started doing the class. When the class ended, I had like a blocking plus, and the camera was just like a static camera, and there was a blocking plus of like just the mechanics of the characters. And then I took a break. Oh yeah, I took a break from the shot from summer. I never really posted it because I was like, oh, that's not as good as I imagined the shot to be. So I just shelved it. I was just like, okay, it's fine. I'll do something else later. And then after summer, there was the Disney. trainee program. I want a apprentice program. I wanted to apply, and I was just like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna try to work on this shot all the way to like final to apply for this. So I had the Disney deadline, and then I think was when I pushed the hardest in terms of work because I was working full time from 9 to 6 ish. So 9 ish to 6 ish, I will get back home and I will work all the way to 4 most of the days for like I remember at midnight was the time where I would go down to the gym, go take a shower, and then start another shift. It was like always 3 to 4. It was crazy. It was like a big push, but it was just for like a few weeks. And then I had the shot like transform from like the previous to the new one. And it really gave like a big impact on the different like until this day people still like to watch the shot because of like this extra push I try to do.
Right. It's a really an incredible shot. So for that few weeks, how many hours were you sleeping?
I mean, of course, some days I will just not do this, but most of days I will just feel like, okay, it was like from sleeping from 3 to 8, 4 to 8, and then the other day I was sleep like the full night. But then again, I
Hmm.
was very motivated. Like, no, I need to finish. I need to finish. I need to finish. I believed. I fooled myself on believing on the idea. So it's just like, no, I think this is gonna work. In the
Right.
end, it didn't work. The Disney trainee did not hire me. So I applied. They replied, like the recruiter ended up replying me, which was a first step. I got like shortlisted. So at least they look at my stuff, they consider, but they did not hire me. But it ended up helping on the rest of the career for sure.
Right. Of course it did, because you eventually landed a role at Sony after applying 4 times. So you applied to Sony 4 times before getting in. What kept you motivated, and how did you eventually break through?
So yeah, I'm motivated. I just wanted to work on a feature film. So I was always with the vision in mind. So I moved to Canada. I applied because they were doing an emoji movie. And I was like, oh, I can animate emoji. It's just like ball and they have legs and stuff. So I was thinking I could do that. And then I got denied. And then I applied for Storks. I get it that I wouldn't get because Storks is such a complicated, amazing film. And I didn't get it. And then I applied for Hotel Transylvania 3, which is the one that I ended up working. They were hiring for Smallfoot, Hotel Transylvania 3, and Spider-Verse, the first part. So they had like those three projects open. I applied, they didn't hire me, and then after a couple months, I did like this push and stuff. I finished this shot, this piece for Disney. It was for Disney, but it was for my demo reel as well. And then I reapplied for Sony, and then they invited me. Like they were in a very big crunch, so they hired a lot of people that they wanted already. So it was a little bit of luck as well because they needed to hire more people. And then I reapplied, and then they decided to offer me only Hotel Transylvania 3 was the one who wanted like Smallfoot and Spider-Verse pass on my reel. So Hotel Transylvania 3 was just like, oh yeah, we can hire you to help us out. And that
Right.
was, but that was it was like it was just trying, yeah, just not giving up.
Right. So how was your experience like working at Hotel Transylvania? Because you go from working at this TV show to now a big budget feature film.
It was exciting and scary again. It was very similar to before when I started working at Bardell. I think I had the same feelings. It was just a little more scary because the studio, it was huge, like the amount of animators, it was a lot. But we had like a lot of good friends from Bardell who also joined Sony at the same time. So it was it was good, but I had like good support. It was scary, but I had like good support. And working with Gandhi was very different because all those rules you learn and you try to apply. I remember the first blocking I showed, it was like a bad thing, but a good thing at the same time. First blocking I showed, first shot, they're like, oh yeah, it's too Disney. Try to tone it, like make it more cartoony because it's too fluid, like the motion. I was like, oh yeah, it's not bad to be too Disney, but is not good because not the style. So then the leads and the supervisors try to help you out fitting on the style. But it was very cool. It was a very good experience for sure.
Hotel Transylvania is it's kind of like a not kind of, it is a groundbreaking 3D animation film just because of the animation style. So
Yeah.
I just want to talk about, that film is extremely famous for, being incredibly expressive, fast, and having this over-exaggerated cartoonish animation. So as an animator, how did you push the character rigs to achieve that signature, cartoonish style without breaking the model? And how was that process like? Like, what did they tell the animators, you know, to achieve that style?
Yeah, so we had proprietary tools at Sony that you could model the expression of the character. We have some tools online these days that can do something similar, but basically you build a lot of blend shapes for specific poses. I remember I spent, I think, 60% of my time modeling more than animating one of the shots because I would make the pose with the rigs and then I'll go on a shot with, I don't know, 60 something frames, I had 40 something blend shapes. So it's like a blend shape and another blend shape, and then you control, like you turn them on and off, on and off. I see like students these days, not that they're lazy, but they don't know that a lot of stuff is done in a very hard way and it's like time consuming because it was like it took a while and it was a very manual and it was annoying. I'm not gonna lie, it was annoying to be like to have animating and then you track the arc and you model it, like you pull the vertex there. Even if you don't know how to model, you still have like some drawovers. And again, it's very specific about the shapes. So you have to like pull them out, pull the corners down. Okay, this doesn't get there. Click on the tool. Now you can model and then you model this, but you go to the next frame. Now the in between this to this it's not gonna the blend shape is not just gonna magically track the arcs and do everything. So we go in the middle and you model another one. And you go close there and you model another blend shape. So you have like three and you turn on and you see when you need to turn off. It's like in one frame or it's like in 5 frames to smooth it out. And when to turn on the other one. So that was like the biggest challenge of working on a stylized project like that. The rigs were not the best, but the tools would allow us to do those crazy things that you see. The tools and the style that
Right.
you can just like hit on a pose. But it was very manual, very, very time consuming, very much. So a lot of students they think like, oh, you're on a big studio, so you're like things are better. Actually,
Oh, sorry.
oh no worries.
Oh, yes. So just to continue, you said a lot of students think that when they're in like a big studio, they think everything is going to be more easy in terms of they're going to have everything in their plate.
Yeah, like easy everything on their plate, and you have a lot of time to be doing it. But actually, you have a lot of time because you need a lot of time. That's like the
Mm,
main thing.
right. Understood. So I just want to, because Hotel Transylvania is such an amazing film. Uh, was there any specific element in Hotel Transylvania that was, that you had a lot of fun in animating, like something very memorable to that whole experience? Maybe an interaction or just a scene, something.
Yeah, yeah, I like a few shots from there from animating drag being very exaggerated on her face and the way he walks. And I like animating Mavis as well. She was a little more grounded and nice to animate. I don't have any specific expression, but just overall animating both of them was very nice.
Right. Okay. So then you end up freelancing for a bit in Montreal, and then you joined Blue Sky as a temp animator. right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
how was your experience like in Blue Sky, and what were the projects you ended up working there?
Yeah, Blue Sky was very short time. I was there for 3 months only. I went to work on Spies in Disguise. I did work only on, I did some like two pre-production tests because the shots were like still in layout to be ready. So I did like two tests and then I worked on one shot, but it was just like some cars arriving and the door closing, and then that was it. I didn't have time to get cast another shot. But it was great. Like the team is great. People there were great. I wish I stayed longer. I really wish, but for me it made sense to leave at the time because from there, as you know, I jumped to DreamWorks, but Blue Sky was the first studio I worked in the US, and it opened the door for other studios because then it was very hard to get the visa, and the visa is something that it gets into the way a lot. I'm not gonna lie, but if you keep trying, have a good quality, you can get there. But it is hard because I remember at Blue Sky, I got the offer. They call me, and I got the offer, and they're like, okay, we're gonna talk to the lawyers. And then the lawyer, like they try, and the lawyer, the recruiter said like, oh, we almost gave up on your case because of the visa, because it was too hard, but it seems like you can get it. And what helped me, it was tracing back to Brazil where I was teaching. I had like Autodesk certification. I had done like small presentations, but the school was like nationwide in Brazil. So because I had those credits, I had like a degree in Brazil. Because I had those credits and I worked with like a feature film in Russia, that helped me qualify for the visa. But it was very hard at the time. I remember the lawyers were almost giving up. And then after I joined Blue Sky, then it's easier for you to change employer because you still need to do like the same visa process, but it's easier because they know you already qualify once, so they can try it. They're more likely to try.
Right. So, talking about after Blue Sky, you end up getting a job at DreamWorks, which of course is an extremely big deal. So, at DreamWorks, you contributed to the How to Train Your Dragon Holiday Special, to
Yep.
the Boss Baby, and the Bad Guys. So, before we get into those films, walk me through your process from, working at Blue Sky to now working at DreamWorks.
Yeah, I mean, I applied to DreamWorks and I was lucky to get an interview with them because at Blue Sky was a temporary position. I wanted to stay, but they said that they were not gonna keep people after that project. And I wanted to work on, I mean, I was open to work on other things. So I decided to apply to DreamWorks and Pixar. Pixar didn't hire me. And then DreamWorks, I was lucky to get like this. They were on a crunch, which wasn't usual for DreamWorks. I remember before this wave that they hired me, and I think they hired like 12 animators on that wave. They haven't hired anyone for like 7 years. They were just like always the same people, and people would jump back like between Disney and DreamWorks for those 7 years. And then on that gap, they open out for like other people to apply. So that's when I got like super lucky to be hired. It was an interview process. The interview was a little bit hard because I mean it's very intimidating to be talking to all those like amazing animators and showing your reel and trying to like explain and stuff. And then they decided like they made me an offer, and the offer from DreamWorks was to be a staff animator instead of contract. So I talked to Blue Sky. I gave Blue Sky the option like, oh no, I can stay if you offer me something a little bit more longer term. And then they said like, no, it's gonna be temporary, unfortunately. So they understood because of like immigration and stuff. They're like, okay, yeah, no, it makes sense that you take this. They were not happy about it, but they understood because I'm international. If I were local, they would probably say like, no, wait for your contract to end to be there. But they're all like super nice as well. Really, really nice people. And then I actually started DreamWorks on Abominable, and then I went to the Dragon's Holiday. So Abominable was my first project there.
Right. So tell me, walk me through the interview process because, as animation students, we're always curious about the interview process, especially at a big studio like DreamWorks. How is that process? Do they ask you, like, what kind of questions do they ask you? How many barriers of
Yeah.
interviews do they have? And do they have like an animation test? Just, walk me through the process.
So yeah, I can. This is gonna be very similar if you ask about riots. So I can speak about both. One's for game, one's for film. But for film, there are no tests. For Riot, I had to do a test. For for DreamWorks, I did not have to do a test. But the interview was fairly similar, where you talk to the recruiter once, and then the recruiter follows up by email a few times back and forth, and then they set a call for you to talk with the supervisor. So at DreamWorks, we had like a call to talk with three groups of leads and supervisors. So the call was 30 minutes with each group. So it was a total of 1 hour and a half back to back. So you're like on one call and then on another call and then another call. So 1 hour and a half, you're like 30 minutes with this, 30 minutes with this, 30 minutes with this. And each one of them asks like different things, but a lot about you, your process, and your work. And they all watch your reel with you. Like they start the interview, oh, let's watch your reel, and then they start talking. It is some of them are more casual, some of them are more serious, some of them are more excited, some of them are more formal. So that's why they have like this big variety of people, and they're just trying to get a feeling of you as a person and you as an animator if you're gonna fit in on the way they're working. As for Riot, fairly similar. You first have a call with the manager, like your lead, and then after this call with the lead, you you do a test if you need to. If you don't need to, you skip the test. But I had to do a test for Riot, and after they
And
evaluate the test,
what was the test, if you don't mind me asking?
it was like they send you a rig. The options of rig, they have the option of Jinx, Galio, Draven. I think those are the three options they have. And then you need to do a special move and a recall. I only had to do the special move, not the recall. But I remember the red Twitch. If you go there, I think JT is going over his test, so you can also check that out. Twitch.tv/rat animators R80, because he talked about his test recently. He used Jinx, but yeah. So you do the test, and then you go back. If they like the test, you move forward to do the interviews, and it's very similar to DreamWorks, like 1 hour and a half, 30 minutes with each group. But the difference is that you get people from different areas. So you talk to VFX people, gameplay, art, uh, animation as well, of course, and concept, rigging, etc. So it's like sometimes one-on-one, sometimes a group of two, and they're just trying to get a sense of you as a person. It's like how you collaborate with other people. And Riot was a little bit harder, a lot more formal. They had like very hard questions that every time it changes, but a lot of not hard question. I'm gonna say like, oh, it's a hard question, but like, oh, in a situation, have you ever encountered a situation like this? And they give an example. So you need to really think about like, oh, have I, and what did you do on this situation? Like
And
if
are these
someone asks for your help and
okay?
you're late on your work, but someone's asks for your help, what would you? So there's a lot of like those questions, which every answer is kind of not obvious, but like it makes sense. It's like, but it's still at the time you're just like, oh yeah, I never thought about it. So yeah, but that's pretty much. And then you talk to the interview, the recruiter again, and then both of them, DreamWorks and Riot, they get you an offer, and then you accept the offer and you move forward. But that's generally the process.
Right. So, very interesting. So you get, you work at the bad guys, and you animated one of my favorite scenes of the bad guys, of when
Which
they're
one?
the one where they're sarcastically talking, where
Oh
she's
yeah,
like,
Diane and Wolf. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right, right. Right when he's getting arrested. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite scenes. Um, but I'm Bad Guys, two is also coming, but Bad Guys is such a cool film. Just the rigs, they look so cool. So Bad Guys is known for his highly stylized, almost 2D inspired look. Can you take us behind the scenes on that? What were the conversations like, or what new techniques did you have to use to help create that unique, visual animation style for the DreamWorks film?
Yeah, so I don't think we use any new unique techniques on the film. JP Sands was the head of animation. He's co-director of Bad Guys 2 now. So he was very visionary in the way they're doing like the speed lines, the smear lines, lines on the face, like the lines to appear and disappear. And we had Jorge Capote as well, an extremely talented artist that did a lot of the pre-production 2D tests to keep that look. And the director of PR, he's like one of the best directors I ever worked with. Like he's extremely talented. He was a head of animation at DreamWorks before on Rise of the Guardian. So he was an animator who also did storyboards and then got promoted to director. So just having this core team of like the director of the film, the animation director, the pre-production artist, and then like all the supervisors super talented. It was like a very animation driven team, and for the director being part of the team, he was very close to a lot of the other animators, so he was a lot more casual in a way. He wasn't like a director that was like from the older times, and it's like no, he was like there recording reference with people and stuff. So it was like I think it was more of like the team who made like everyone wanted to make something special. And JP was always pushing like I know that he will give a note like I know this is not important, but it's for the people who are gonna frame by frame this shot later on online. I know no one's gonna see it, but there will be someone that will be looking for it, and we wanna give to them like this, like everything being very artistic and crafted. In terms of technology, I don't think we had anything new per se. I don't remember anything as specifically new. I know they did a lot of the 2D effects with like the smears and stuff, but that wasn't done by us. So yeah, but it was really cool film. Those
No,
shots are my favorite.
yeah, such a cool film, and it has so many cool details. I do want to ask, now you're currently working at Riot Games as a gameplay animator, and you're currently working on a secret project as a research and development. So
Yeah.
I have a few questions. What is research and development in animation? Can you share whatever you are allowed to share about the current R&D work at Riot? And what excites you about the future of that project?
Yeah. So R&D at Riot, we take care of projects that are in development. So I cannot share anything about the project because it wasn't announced yet, but I can give an example. 2XKO was on R&D, which is the project that is gonna release soon. I don't know when yet, but it's gonna release soon. And it's a fighting game with League of Legends characters. So it was Project L in the past, and basically it was on R&D for them to develop the right look, right feel, and right style in terms of animation and gameplay to get like the right game mechanics. Once these aspects are ready, the project kicks in, it gets greenlit. So it's like, okay, cool, let's ship it. Let's put in production. Once the project cross over like R&D, we're like experimenting, studying, making sure we establish good foundations for everything, both animation and gameplay. Once we hit the quality, like the bar where this the owners of Riot, the stakeholders, the people who are like, okay, this project is ready to go. That's when they do like an announcement campaign, and then the project goes in production. And then from there to the end is just building assets to make sure the game is complete. But before that, what we're doing now is establishing animation style, establishing the rules, like the important rules, establishing every gameplay aspect or implementation aspect, and establishing rules as well. Like, okay, we're gonna keep this like this, we're gonna implementing a rule like this, we're gonna do it like this, etc. So it is very early, the project that I'm working right now, but it's very exciting to be working on something very early to be able to help build out all this foundation for the future. Once the project's released, like all of this will be reused for as long as the project lives. So that's very cool.
Right. And in your Patreon, you had mentioned the interview process and how you got that position, which was very interesting. My
Yeah.
second question is, Mel, you animated Mel, and this Mel was introduced to League after the story of Arcane, and you were the sole animator bringing her into the game. What was your thought process like balancing a in-game to feel authentic within the League's world while still evoking the presence fans remember from Arcane?
Yes, so I rewatched Arcane when I heard I was gonna work on Mel. We had early access to Arcane season 2 for being working on Mel, but we had like specific showings. So I remember I watched the first 3 episodes like almost 2 years before it got released. And they're in various stages. Like some of them were like storyboards still, a lot of them were like animated shots, blocking, etc. So we had like those showings throughout the year. I think we had like 3 times during the year. And I was trying to find the balance where like because Mel's on League, it's after Arcane. So she's like Arcane ended, she goes back to Noxus, and then she is like Mel. So she's powerful already. In Arcane, she's discovering her power, and in League, she has her power already. So I was trying to still capture the finesse and the way like Mel was moving in Arcane, but it's still pushing like very extreme poses for like very cool ways to make her powerful and attack, not like she's still learning. So she mastered it already. So the poses had to capture those things. And of course we had like a great narrative and art team to also help out with that. But that
Right.
was the process.
Amazing. I've seen the work. So I had another question. There's so many champions in League. How, you and all the animators make them so unique and different from each other?
It's all about understanding the narrative and the personality of the champ. We have like a lot of anytime I started a new champ, I will do like a post sheet and try several posts that would fit the personality of the champ based on the narrative story and the design of the champ. So I was like exploring a lot. I always wanted to make them feel what they are on like the design and at the same time their narrative. If you say like, oh, this champ is shy, insecure, and the design like the way, or I try to work on top of that, but I build like several poses, several, when I say several, like maybe like 10, 12 poses to try to express this before I even start thinking of what the idol is gonna be. So that exploration of personality is what makes the character feel unique. Because we don't go for the cliche. It's just like a guy with a sword, and then you just pose the guy with a sword. It's like a guy with a sword, but like where is he from? What is he doing? What did he do before? How is he doing it? How is the sword heavy? Is the sword light? How is he holding the sword? Why is he holding the sword like that? It has like a specific way he learned how to fight. So we try to ask all those questions and then we try to come up. And sometimes like he just needs to hold the sword like this, but we make it very specific to the way. he's like holding the sword, thinking about all of those things.
So I would assume a lot of coordination with the story team.
Yeah, we talk a lot with the story team, but a lot of it is also animation exploration, purely
Okay.
like just animation exploration.
Understood. So this is a question which a lot of students are very interested in, including myself. So how would you say your personal workflow is different working at, let's say, gameplay versus cinematics or feature? What would that workflow be, different?
Yeah, it's funny because for me it's pretty much the same. Because when I work for feature film, I still animate for every angle, and then I go back to the camera, and then I focus on that camera. And then for game, I animate for every angle because you can see the character from every angle. And I still record reference both for games and film. So my workflow is fairly similar. The only difference is that sometimes I work directly in Spline for game instead because I want to implement faster. So I just want to check things in engine, but I go back to step to fix the poses and stuff, and then I go back to spline. So it's not. I would say it's about the same, but feature film I focus more on the face and that specific camera for the character.
Right. And in terms of critiques, Uh, are the critiques from Riot Games doing gameplay similar to feature at a DreamWorks or Sony? Is it like drawer critique, same, or is there some difference?
Similar. It's similar. The difference is that for games we focus a lot more on how we feel for the gameplay and how well it's not a lot about like mine or polish on gameplay, but it's more about right flow and feeling really nice. So it's a lot of the feel when you play, like, oh, you're attacking, oh, this is feeling nice, even if it's not the most polished. And for feature film, it's like very, very polished. So frame by frame, making sure everything's tracked, every arc is there, etc.
Understood. So now we're coming back towards the last few questions. So I had a question about uh, so you worked at all these different studios from DreamWorks, Blue Sky, Sony, Riot Games. How do the studio cultures differ across them?
It's fairly similar. I think for the animation team, I feel like most of them were very, very similar. I can't pinpoint any like major difference. Everyone like from the animation team is like very nice, supportive. People are really, really nice to each other. A lot of like feedback culture. Like you show a shot, people give you notes. You can show like anyone, like people who are sitting next to you. The reviews are nice and like not like very intimidated or anything like that. I feel like all of them I had very similar experience.
And are these drawer critiques normally?
Sometimes they're over, sometimes just talking, sometimes you just stop by with someone and they just try to explain. Sometimes some people even like, oh, I can make a post for you to try to show you. It depends on how much time because everyone's busy, but it has
Right.
all of that. People are like it's very nice overall.
Understood. Yes. Uh, it's similar to the studio I'm currently at, where, everyone is just so helpful that, and I've been asking the person near me so many questions, and I felt like because he's a senior animator, I felt like I was asking too many questions. So I went and I told him, "Am I asking you too many questions?" And he replied, "No, you're not asking enough questions." So,
Yeah.
everyone is so supportive. This question which I thought about, and I really am so curious about your answer. So in Riot Games, you work at gameplay, it's more on the realistic side. But you've also worked at the stark opposite, which is Hotel Transylvania, which is the most cartoonist side, you know, of a feature can get. So what are your thought process like? And, just looking back from working at these two extremes.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of a ramp up to get used to the style because like Hotel Transylvania was like super stylized, but the dragons was very realistic and it was a very short time difference between me working on both of them. But it was always about like a couple weeks of just maybe like a week of just adjusting to the style and seeing what helps me a lot is seeing other people's work and go frame by frame on their work. This really helps me. I see like, oh, I'm gonna work on this. I'm gonna work on League. So I go and I check how they're doing frame by frame. I'm gonna work on, I don't know, like new Pixar movie. I'm gonna watch it, make sure I see like okay what they're doing. And once you join a new project, I always like seeing like what is being done. Like I like seeing the process as well. Like oh that was the blocking and that's the final, just to understand a little bit how they're doing. So I feel like that's like my way to adapt to the style. And then it takes a little bit of trying, of course, and guidance. The supervisor is always very good guiding like oh you're doing this transition in 6 frames, try to do in two because more stylized, and so things like that will help you get a sense for the style.
Right. Talking about stylized, you have a great course on it at, animationflow.com, which I
Yeah, yeah.
recommend people, really good course with also, in my opinion, even though I don't have it, I plan to eventually your Miata rig. In my opinion,
Oh yes,
that's one
yes.
of the coolest rigs ever. I did want
Yeah,
to
it
ask
is.
about, yeah, it's super cool. So you were very open about your first animation reels, not landing you a job initially. What was the most important lesson you learned from that early experience, and what do you think changed? What aspect of your reel changed that ended up getting you that job?
I think I was always very open because I still believe I have a lot to learn and I have a lot to improve, and I'm always trying to push myself to do like better things, and I'm always looking up to those animators that I met. They're amazing. So there's always someone better than you. That's the thing. And when I just started, I had my reel and I kind of knew like I think my eyes got better than my skills at first. So I was just like I had my reel, but I knew it wasn't good enough. So I kept improving it, and but I was still applying because I was like, why I'm not gonna apply? If I keep trying to make my reel perfect, I'm never gonna apply anywhere because I'm not gonna be able to animate like this animator that I'm seeing here or this movie that I'm watching. So I think what changed was just me having like a very critical, specific eye about my work. I knew I wasn't good at certain things and I was working on those. Like I knew my mechanics weren't perfect. I knew my animation wasn't flowing enough. And then I was like, okay, next shot, I'm gonna try to work on the arcs of the arm and the head. So I was really trying to track. Okay, I'm gonna work only on the eyes, making sure the eyes are like, and I was just like trying to get reference, like, oh, blink here, half blink here. It's that. So for me, it was like very much like this, having the eye of like where I want my work to be, and having the reels like I was watching with like outside perspective, like, yeah, that's not good enough. And then I would just like, and I always gonna show my reels like, yeah, but here, I don't like it. And I even say that on the interview, like some interview, I was just like, yeah, like I really like this shot, but I think this, and this would be better if I did it this way. So I was like very critical in the Lavinia Rose shot. I'm still very critical. I think the rhythm could be better there. I think the beats are too rhythmic, and it could be a little bit more contrast. So, and I had the vision, but like, no, I need to finish it. And the next one, I'm gonna work on that. So, and I'm always looking at some like movies that I like or some animators that I like, yeah, like how they're doing, like what they're doing better. And I try to push myself to that. So I think having this mentality helped me really like get the real ready for the next job, etc.
Right. So these three questions are questions which, students want to know the most. What do you think makes a demo reel stand out today with the job market?
Yeah, I think it's what we just talked about, specificity on the character and solid mechanics. I think if the reel doesn't have solid mechanics, it kills the illusion of the character being alive. And if the characters are just bland in terms of expressions or personality, that makes also it kills the illusion of the life of the shot. So having the character very specific and having it be very expressive, that I think that's
Right.
the main thing.
So a student who, let's say, is currently still learning body mechanics, acting in Maya, they're still not, they're probably in the intermediate level, they're just around
Yeah,
that, they've just crossed beginner, they're not in advanced. So would you recommend these students who are in the intermediate level to learn Unreal Engine, or would you recommend them to learn after they reach advanced and, Maya animation?
I would say after because you do not need to do a lot of in engine implementation unless you're starting like on a very small studio and you're like one of the few animators. Usually all the big studios I know they have a person implementing all the work for you. It's good to understand what it does, but I think it's even better if you know how to animate better and then you can even learn that at the job because I don't have engine experience, but they needed someone to do assets for him. But it's important to understand, like, okay, I can't do like a very big anticipation for my attack because the attack is in like 4 frames or something like that. So it's important to understand like the game limitations, but I don't think it's extremely important to implement everything in Unreal. But as an extra skill to have as well whenever you're showing a reel. Doesn't hurt, but I would say focus more on animating good first.
Understood. So the last three questions we have is, uh, what's one mistake you see on students' demo reel that should be avoided?
I think just what I said about the mechanics. When I see that the shot has like the mechanics are not accurate, it just kills a little bit too much for me. And I'm very critical. I try to take it easy when I'm teaching, but I'm like extremely critical. So I would say making the acting specific and the mechanics solid. That is like whenever I see a reel, I'm just like, okay, yeah, this is good. Or I was like, yeah, still lacking basic principles. And the basic principles is like when the mechanics are not accurate, it's like is in, is out, or the arc is not tracked, or the hand is popping, stuff like that.
All right. Uh, so how did you manage, especially early on in your career, balancing learning animation while working and freelancing? And any advice for students, juggling learning animation and working at the same time?
Yeah, I think it should be, of course, it should do that if you have the time and the energy. It's good to take breaks. You shouldn't just be like destroying your life just working 24/7. That's not gonna be helpful. You still need to rest. If you don't rest, your eyes get tired. And if you're freelancing on something like some animation related freelance, try to use the time that you're doing personal shots to do something opposite to your freelance. For example, if I'm freelancing doing let's say feature film only, I'm freelance doing like a very action heavy shot. My personal task is gonna be a very subtle acting. So at least you don't get tired of doing the same. So if you're freelancing a feature film, you can do game if you're interested. But if you just want to work on game, you're freelancing on game and the style is top down like League of Legends, try to do a third person. So something is different enough so you don't get too tired of the same. And don't don't kill yourself. Try to really take breaks and don't rush it because the more you rush, more mistakes you make.
Right.
Yeah.
So any advice you have for recent animation students who just graduated, let's say they just graduated, or let's say they're in the last year of their program?
I think it's just like a lot of people when they just graduate or they are on the last year, they think they're done with studying because you graduated, which makes sense. But I think that is just the very first step. The animation is extremely hard and it takes longer for you to get like proficient. I believe the curve for animation is very it's very sad because like you see modeler lighting, texturing, they have a more like learning curve, a little bit more like this. And animation you stay down here for a while until you go up. So don't get frustrated if you're not at the level that you see people around or you think you should be just because you graduated. Because a lot of people, like when I just graduated versus when I got my job as Sony, for example, there were like hundreds of, maybe like thousands of extra hours that I was studying between like being graduated until I got my real ready. So don't try to rush yourself like, oh, I graduated, I need to be at this level, because probably these people are also like studying. And don't lose the uh, eagerness of like keep studying, or this motive like I want to keep doing things, I want to keep studying. I think that's what keep like the resilience is what keep people like good animators being better, because if you give up and you're like, oh no, it's not for me, that is just gonna make it like your journey take longer, or even
Understood.
like give up completely.
Yes. Great answer. Alex, before I ask the last question, it just popped into my mind. So for Riot Games, you said the animation is done in Maya, but what is Unreal Engine used for? Is it just used for the rendering and lighting, or is it used for other stuff too?
The game is R&D games like Valorant as well and XKO, they were done in Unreal, so the whole gameplay is in Unreal Engine,
Even the
but
animation.
the animation is
Okay.
exported from Maya. So we
Okay.
export similar to what I teach in the classes, like you do the idle and then you export and you bring to Unreal. And you do the walk, you export, you bring to Unreal. So
So
it's pretty straightforward.
so as an animator, your job in Unreal is just exporting it, or is there other stuff after that?
It's just importing it most
Oh,
cases.
okay.
Yeah, just importing it. Someone is gonna connect for you. Sometimes just like exporting from Maya and your hands off. Sometimes you need to like just bring in Unreal and like connect from here to here, but it's not nothing too hard, nothing major.
Because Riot Games has this cool button, right, where you just press it and it automatically exports it to Unreal Engine.
No, we actually do it like the export as FBX regular.
Okay.
There's nothing.
Okay.
I think Epic might have something like that, but they're doing everything in Unreal.
Okay. So my last question is, Alex, looking back at the entire journey you shared with us today, from your first bouncing ball exercises to animating at one of the biggest gaming companies in the world, what is the single bit, a piece of advice that you would like to give young Alex who was just starting out?
I would say just do the same. I don't think I think I wouldn't change anything I did really. And I didn't do everything perfect, but I think the mistakes I did, and it was many mistakes I did, helped me learn and get to where I am. So just like, yeah, don't give up, do the same. If you think about giving up, it's just gonna pass, and keep trying it. And always adjust your vision, which I think I did it throughout my career, because I wasn't like an animator that I started back in Brazil, like, no, I wanna work at Pixar. I wanna work on something animation related. So that was my dream. And then when I was there, I was like, oh, I want to work something outside of Brazil. So that was my dream. I never thought about like I'm gonna work at Pixar, DreamWorks, etc. So I was always adjust my vision, never like having this far goal. Like, oh, I don't even know how to get there. For me, like for example, if I were young today and I wanted to work on games, just be like, yeah, I just want to work on any game. And of course, I really want to work on God of War, for example, but no, any game right now would help me. Oh, actually, now I really want to work on an action game. Until I was always adjusting when it was fit to it. Like, oh, I really want to work on feature film. I work at Sony. I want to work on a better feature film. I want to work on another feature film. So that was like that's I think it was the main advice.
Understood. Well, Alex, thank you so much for such an insightful answers and just giving
No,
your
thank you.
perspective. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to animationflow.com and your Patreon. I learned so much from them.
Nice.
And thank you
Good to hear.
again, and I wish you all the best in your career.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
glad.
Okay. Have a good one.
All right. See you. Bye bye.
See you.